Eliud Kipchoge has announced that he is returning to the marathon this spring. In April, he'll be running the London Marathon, which already has a stacked elite field, both men's and women's. But of course, Kipchoge, arguably the greatest marathon runner of all time, coming back to London is a big deal. So we're going to unpack that, why he's coming to London, how he will do, how this may or may not affect his legacy. Jesse, first things first. I mean, for those who have been in a coma for the last 10 or 12 years and are just coming out of it now, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really into distance running. What's going on in the world of distance running? Let me look up who's won the last bunch of Olympic marathons, who's won all the majors. The name Eliud Kipchoge keeps coming up over and over again. Obviously, arguably the GOAT, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100% one of the greatest marathoners in history. He held the world record for years. He's technically the only runner to have ever broken two, even though it wasn't an official world record. His official PB is 2:01:09 from Berlin in 2022, which was a world record at the time and still stands as the second fastest. He also, on top of that, holds 3 of the top 10 fastest times ever. He's won Tokyo, he's won gold medals in Rio, so 2 Olympics back to back. Yeah, and he's won, over 10 majors probably, I think. So
I know, I could do the math here. It's like he won Berlin 5 times, London 4 times, he's won Chicago and Tokyo.
Yeah.
Tokyo Marathon, not
and
just
he
the Olympics.
was undefeated for, a 7-year period almost, so...
Yeah, which is uncanny. In counting his 21 official marathons, it's easier to count his not first place finishes than it is to count his wins. He's won 16 times and only not won 5 times in 21 official races. And that doesn't include the breaking 2 in the Ineos 159 challenge where he was going after being the first person to run under 2 hours in a marathon. So all this to say, the man is a living legend.
Mm-hmm.
But he turned 40 on November 5th of last year, and 2024 was not kind to the Kipper. Pretty disastrous year. Let's unpack that a little bit, and that's part of the reason why I think there's a great deal of intrigue that he's going to be running London now.
Up until last year, he, like we said, had gone almost undefeated. But then the Tokyo Marathon and 2024 in March, everyone was super excited. It was his first race of the year, especially coming into an Olympic year. He was expected to win, of course, as he usually does. And then he ended up finishing 10th with a time of 2:06:50, which of course is still super fast for us mere mortals. But for a guy like Kipchoge, that's kind of turtle's pace, I guess we'll say. Kipchoge, relevant to him, not for us. But and then in Paris, it kind of only got worse at the Olympics, and it was his first and only ever DNF. So it was a very talked about moment in the Olympics, and a lot of people since then were questioning whether he'll even race a marathon again. So him announcing that he's running in London was just super big news because, a lot of people kind of just thought he was done or maybe wasn't going to make it to the majors again. But I don't think anyone was really expecting this. So
he said to journalists today, so we're recording this on Friday, it was announced this morning in London that he would be running, and with a clever little Instagram post, which we'll talk about in a second. We'll dissect the Instagram post and its complex meanings in a second here. But he says, all in all, I'm well now, referring to his injuries in Paris that caused him to pull out. My body is good. It was not my day, obviously referring to Paris again. I tripped at a challenge. I learned from that. Running is not straight all the time. Sometimes you can hit a bump like driving a car. It was a big challenge. It was demoralizing, but above all, it's sport. You need to wake up, go again, push on every day. I can just hear him saying that, I can hear the Kipchoge voice saying that. So
the of the marathon coming to life.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, he's a larger than life character. There's Kipchoge memes, right? So it sounds to me like he's looking for a reset, and we'll talk a little bit about what we can anticipate potentially from the Kipper in London in April. I should say he did have a couple of other hiccups in his history thus far. He had a tough time before in London. He's got all of these top-level performances where he's won the London Marathon numerous times and set course records there. But in London in 2020, during the COVID year, which was a bit of a screwball year because they just ran around St. James Park like multiple times. It was raining out, cold, I remember. And he finished only 8th in 2:06:49. It was really the first time that we ever saw him falter. It was the first time in that 7-year stretch you mentioned where he did not pull off a victory. It kind of ended the streak. And then, of course, in Boston in 2023, Boston, a hilly, challenging course. He finishes 6th place, 2:09:23, which is the slowest marathon of his career. And it started to feel like it was spelling maybe the little bit of the beginning of the end of his dominance as a marathon runner. I think now age is definitely a factor for this guy, right? Father time goes undefeated, as the saying goes. As we said before, he has officially turned 40, although we should say there's a lot of speculation that Mr. Kipchoge is actually quite a bit older than 40 because of the way Kenyan citizens aren't always, especially if you live in the Rift Valley, aren't always documented from birth. And so the guy could be 45 years old, which would be just mind-boggling that he's performing at this high a level. But also in those quotes from the press conference, he's starting to sound a little bit like an age grouper. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he said also, I still think that I can compete. Okay, cool. So that means that I think, reading the tea leaves here, he still wants to be up there in the front in the lead pack in the first half of this race. Great. I'm training in a good way. I can compete with the youngest people. It's huge inspiration to actually see the young people half my age running up with me, training hard, racing in a hard way. I'm a masters runner. I run with a lot of 40 plus guys. That's very age group vibes right there.
I was gonna say, I mean, I know English isn't his first language, but it sounds very like the dad of the group encouraging the youngsters.
Yeah, just inserting that in there. He's like, it's really cool that these guys, that I can still keep pace with these guys half my age.
Yeah.
A little bit of a flex there, right? We should say that last year at London, we were both there covering it. Another 40 plus goat, Kenenisa Bekele, who is arguably one of the great, if not the great distance runner of all time as well. He set the Masters world record, the 40 plus world record in London last year of 2:04:15. That's a number that I think we're going to circle in red ink a few times going into covering London. That might be a number that Mr. Kipchoge might go after. My guess is also that he's probably been paid quite a bit of money to show up for this event.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Because he's thinking about it. He's going into a hornet's nest here with all these young, emerging studs that don't seem to be too afraid of him, that a couple of them have beat him pretty soundly in the last year or two in the marathon. And so he's not going back to Tokyo, where conceivably they could have cleared out the field for him and let him try to win Tokyo again. He's not going back to Boston, where he really had an ugly finish in Boston, and you'd think maybe he'd want a do-over in Boston. Instead, he's going back to London, which is going to be just a lightning fast race. I'm going to go through a couple of names for you. It's the first time in history that there is 6 2:04 runners or faster in the field. He will be going up against reigning champion Alexander Mutiso, who ran 2:03 and won last year. Sebastian Sawe of Kenya, who just came off a big win in Valencia, who's one of the fastest runners of all time. He's run a 2:02:05. Timothy Kiplagat, who beat Kipchoge last year in Tokyo and is also a 2:02 runner. We've got Tamarat Tola, Paris Olympic champion and 2:03 man, also racing. And then you got Jacob Kiplimo, who's never run a marathon before. He's debuting. He's the second fastest half marathoner ever and a really, really good versatile racer. He's really good at cross country. He's really a gutsy runner. I think a lot of people are excited to see him run a marathon for the first time. I don't know where Kipchoge fits in all of this.
No, it'll be a super interesting race. We've got some really big names, a lot of young guns. Adi Nagy, I think, super underrated. No one really ever expects him, but he always pulls up big results, I find. So he's one to watch in my eyes, I think.
So how this is being framed, I mentioned the Instagram post earlier that the London Marathon put out. It's a video of Kipchoge like jogging along on what looks like a London backstreet, like a laneway, and he stops in front of a poster, and the poster says "Progress, not perfection." And then Kipchoge seems to take out a Sharpie, like he's like tagging this poster, and he writes Kipchoge London, and then jogs away. Progress, not perfection is an interesting and vague, kind of ominous thing to say in relation to Kipchoge announcing that he's coming back to the marathon. I think that's sort of like, it's almost like he's hedging a little bit. Like, I'm no longer the guy who's trying to win every marathon I ever run. That's not happening anymore. But I'm starting the third act of my marathoning career right now.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Yeah.
So, what are you think Kipchoge's chances of winning?
Flip. I think they're pretty. I do agree. I think his age is playing quite a big factor. And I just do think that there's too many younger runners that, can just bring the heat. And especially when there's like a big pack of kind of young guns that can hold the tough paces for a long time. I think he's just going to have a tough time like sticking with a group that can work so well together and run a super fast time. So it will be super interesting to see where he can place, and if he will be going after that Masters record. I definitely think it's possible if he can hang on for the first half for sure, especially. But yeah, I'm super excited to watch it for sure. Both the women's and men's fields are just going to be insane.
I should say, London course record set by the late Kelvin Kiptum in 2023, 2:01:25. I have to imagine that this very, very elite, talented field will be going after that course record, and that just might be too fast for 40-year-old Eliud Kipchoge. My guess is that he's going to be in Group 2, looking for that low 2:04, 40-plus world record, and he can begin his career as an ambassador for us guys over 40. All right, Jesse, we'll close that out. We will definitely be talking more about Kipchoge, about his training going into London. That will be super fascinating to watch on social media. And then, of course, covering London live in late April when it all goes down.
Totally.